I'm going to teach this mini class right now where I'm going to tell you what to do about this problem. You've dieted. However, you know that dieting doesn't work long term, but you're not sure what to do instead. You've restricted and you've binged. You've dieted, and still you're not where you want to be. You know that it doesn't work, but you don't know what to do instead of it. This is the class for you. Hi, Carrie Nygaard here. In this mini class, I'm going to teach you how to use brain science to release excess stored energy on your body. And I'm going to tell you the number one tool to use to know when to eat. And then also the simplest framework to know what to eat, what works best for your body. Here we go. We're going to dive in right now in this mini class. What to do when you know dieting doesn't work, but you don't know what to take its place. Let's go. I've helped thousands of women over the years learn how to stop struggling with food, how to be completely and genuinely in control with food so that they can end dieting for forever and just be a normal eater who maintains a happy, normal weight. All right. So first, you need to know that from the time I was about 13 years old, I had dieted on and off for over 20 years. It wasn't until my mid 30s that I was able to finally stop counting calories, stop being just crazy about food. I had lost and gained the baby weight, I don't know how many times. Back in 2015, at that point, I had lost it already, the baby weight 5 times. And I was back down to my ideal weight, but my brain was so cluttered with so many thoughts about food, what I could eat, what I shouldn't eat. I couldn't think about anything else. The relief and peace that I was expecting to feel from being at my ideal weight was anything but. And the reason this happens is because dieting does something with our brain. So this is a model of the brain, okay? I'm going to talk about the brain in terms of the triune brain theory by Paul McDonald. Our brain is very complex and very interrelated, but I'm going to bring it down to a very conceptual, easy to understand way so we can relate it to our behavior with food. So this is a cross section of the brain. Up here in the front of our brain, right up here, this is the prefrontal cortex. This is the part of our brain that's conscious. It's the part I'm using right now as I speak to you. It's the part of the brain that makes choices and decisions. However, back here in the mid and the back in the brainstem, this is called the lower brain. It's also sometimes referred to as the monkey brain or the reptilian brain, the primal brain. I oftentimes will refer to it as the toddler brain. This part of your brain does not have the ability to reason, and it is hardwired for survival. When you diet, there is something I call the survival switch gets flipped in your brain because your brain is hardwired for survival so that when it starts to think that food is somehow scarce because you've decided to go on a diet or because you're on a restrictive diet or you've restricted calories significantly, what happens is the survival response gets flipped in your brain, and then it sends you so much obsessive thinking about food and hyper focus in on food because your brain has identified that somehow food is scarce because you're dieting. And now it wants you to hyper focus in on it in a way to get you to focus in on getting more of it. So dieting actually flips the survival response. And if you've done it enough, it actually makes it more difficult in the future to diet so that you might actually see results in weight coming off from dieting. But in the long term, as you try to go back and do it, you'll get less and less results as far as releasing weight off your body because that's of that survival response. So what do? Dieting doesn't work. It trips our survival response, but I don't know what to do instead of, and I'd like to release some excess energy off my body, some excess adipose tissue. That's all it is just stored energy on your body. Sometimes we say it's bad. Sometimes we say my body's not where it's supposed to be if it's carrying a certain amount of adipose tissue. I want you to know that from this moment forward, your weight is the least interesting thing about your body. It's totally okay to desire to release weight off your body. It's not because you aren't being body positive or because you're fat phobic or any of that. It's okay to desire to release weight off your body. But let's get clear on that it's just adipose tissue. It's just stored energy on your body. It does not have the ability to take away your value and worthiness as a person, nor your worthiness and of your body. Your body is fulfilling the measure of her creation, no matter how much adipose tissue is on her body. Okay, so one thing that you need to know that when you trip the survival response in your brain, you will hyper focus in on food And even if you release the weight off your body, it will not become sustainable, or you'll create a disordered relationship with food and your body as a result. So dieting, this restrictive type thinking around food, in the long run makes things worse. So what I propose to do, what I say instead of, let's trust our body and let's work with her. For so many years, we've tried to follow so many calorie points. We've tried to follow so many meal plans that what we've lost is the ability to listen to our body and know what works best for her. We've stopped listening to her altogether. We don't even know what it feels like to be hungry. Just 1 second here. Stay with me. Okay, stay with me here. Just had to give something to someone out the door. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and screen share. I'm going to show you and tell you, well, first I just hit the first point. Why does dieting not work long-term, right? And you've probably experienced that. Maybe you've lost weight, but then you gain it back and maybe even more. It's because your body is putting on more weight, because if you've done it a few times, it thinks that you're going to try to do this again in the future, and it's trying to store up more weight for future times of dieting, or as far as that lower brain is concerned, scarcity around food, like famine, time of famine, which is also one reason why when you think that you're on or off track, when you're off track, you tend to binge. And then when you're on track, we tend to restrict. And this just exacerbates that feast or famine, that survival response in your brain. Okay. So it wasn't until I chose to be in perfect partnership with my body. And this is a method that I teach in my larger Freedom with Body and Food program. My program is called FBF, or Freedom with Body and Food. And I've helped hundreds of women come to this place of harmony, to stop dieting, to get out of that strict and binge, flip survival response in your brain, and to find a place of peace and harmony in the present moment. And then that peace and harmony with your body allows you to become normal with food, normal with your body, and then you get what you want long term. All right, I'm going to go ahead and hit screen share, and I will pull up and show you the next part. It's the how to know when to eat and how to know what to eat. Now, let me hit screen share here first. There we go. All right, look at this car right here. I want you to think of this car as an analogy. Your body is like a car. It allows you to sojourn throughout time. It allows you to go from point A to point B. Okay. I want you to think of yourself, your conscious thinking self right now, the part of you that's listening to me, the part of you that has the ability to make choices and judgment calls, that has the ability to reason. I want you to think of yourself as the person behind the wheel, the driver of the car. And I want you to think of that lower survival obsessed primal brain as the toddler in the back seat in the car seat. And the reason why I want you to think of it in this term is because the lower brain does not have the ability to reason, much like a toddler does not have the brain development to be able to reason like we do up here in our prefrontal cortex, because their prefrontal cortex is not fully developed yet. So what happens is that when we diet, that survival response gets flipped, and then that toddler, that survival obsessed toddler, climbs out of the toddler seat, right, the car seat, and gets behind the wheel and wreaks havoc in our life as far as how we relate to food and how we interact with food, and we feel out of control. And we think the reason the car's going all over the place is because we were out of control and we can't seem to control it. But really, we're not even driving the car anymore. Those survival responses have taken over, and the toddler is driving the car. So what I'm about to teach to you in just a few minutes in this mini class is this: you are not out of control, but your survival instincts cause you to feel out of control. So I'm going to teach you how to put the toddler back in the back seat, buckle him in the car seat so that you can stay conscious, so that you can stay consistently and genuinely in control with food, and be in a place of harmony and partnership with your body and not feel like you're working against your body. I teach in my life coaching practice, I teach people 8 basic things about their brain, that lower brain, so that they can get in front of their brain and leverage that knowledge so that you are steering where you want to go and not that lower brain survival instincts. And one thing you need to know, especially when it comes to dieting, it's really important to understand that your brain wants to keep everything the same. It wants the path of least resistance, and it will not tolerate big changes for very long. So this is what dieting does. They say, okay, scrap everything you've been eating and just follow this meal plan. And you think, okay, if I just follow this meal plan for 9 weeks, 10 weeks, 12 weeks, whatever it is, if I just follow it until I get to where I want to be, then I don't have to do this thing anymore. And I can eat these other things and I can finally be where I want to be. But in the process, because your brain's survival response has been flipped, you are so hyper focused that as soon as that meal plan is done for that amount of time, you go off of it and it's like, you're out of control. Okay. I want you to realize that the way to do this is to not make big changes. You have to do things that are brain friendly. The toddler in the back seat, we still make sure the toddler's fed. We still make sure that the toddler is well rested. We make sure that the toddler is safe. We just don't let the toddler behind the driving wheel, behind the steering wheel, because then it's going to wreak havoc. Okay. But get really clear in that you have a survival obsessed toddler brain, lower primal brain, and your conscious thinking self is who you really are. Every body on this earth has a lower survival obsessed brain. That is why we are still alive as a species. So we can appreciate these hardwired instincts. But we want to know that we have hardwired instincts, but that those are not us. But we want to respect them, because when that biology of that survival instinct takes over, it is going to be very disoriented. No matter how much you want to do one thing, that survival instinct is going to trump it. Okay. So we want to be brain friendly. We want to consider the toddler. We don't want to try to rework anything from scratch in your diet. We want to start with what you already like and things that you're already used to eating. This will be very comforting. It won't be a big pendulum swing, right? If you pull the pendulum really far this way, it's going to swing really far this way. And that's what being on and off dieting is like. It's like a pendulum swinging. Instead, we want to think of making simple, brain-friendly changes that put us on the track that if we keep going, we get what we want as far as releasing weight, but we get to feel good all along the way and in control all along the way. And once we release the weight, there's no falling off track, because it's who we naturally are. It's our mode of operation. It's just who we are, because we are not buckled up, not gearing up for a change, but that we are settled into who we really are and to the rhythm of our body and what she actually needs. Remember, your body's like the car. We're going to put the fuel in her that will fuel her well. We're going to make sure it's good quality fuel, but we're not going to let the toddler behind the wheel. So one way we do this is that we start with foods that we already like, that we're used to eating. But we want to think in terms of, and we do not count macros. I do not teach women to count macros, but you want to think in terms of, I want to have a good, well-rounded fueling for my body. I want to fuel my body, my car, right, with food that's going to allow me to go where I want to go, so I get to feel the way I want to feel. Not because the food is good or bad, or I become good or bad based upon my decisions with food. It's just choices. The question is, what do I actually want? And what am I already used to eating, so that the toddler doesn't throw a fit? Okay. So what proteins, what's veggies, what's fat, what carbs do you already like to eat? I have a whole process in my larger Freedom with Body and Food program where I take women, where we look at what they're already used to eating, and we just make little tweaks so that it supports them and where they want to go in releasing weight, but it doesn't feel like big changes, because it's food that they already like, that they're used to eating, that they look forward to eating. But we've just made a few tweaks that the brain is not going to have a tantrum over, so that there's no on-off track. We're just fueling our body in a way that feels good, that takes us where we want to go. Now, what do we eat? Okay, so we want to make sure, what is a fueling? How do we fuel our car? Well, a fueling is just a meal, and it consists of approximately 30 grams of protein or more. Not grams of weight, but grams of protein, meaning like actual grams on the nutrition label. We want about 30 grams or more. And the reason for that is because your body will function so much better. It will be satiated. It will get the amino acids that it needs to build muscle. And not only that, but that there's a high thermogenetic aspect to protein, is that it takes more energy to process the food, right? The energy in protein than in other foods. And here's the thing, is that unless you're mindful of it, it's really easy to not get enough protein. So we're going to focus in on protein. What proteins do I already like to eat? What veggies do I already like to eat? We want to make sure that there's 2 to 3 or more servings that we're getting a day. And then what fats do I like to eat? Do I like dressings? Do I like butters? Do I like oils? What kind of fat do I like to eat? And then carbohydrates, I have an asterisk there because most of us do better, especially as women, keeping carbohydrates in our diet. It's just that in our Western diet, we've become so attuned to processed foods, and so many of that are processed carbohydrates. It becomes very easy to get carbs in. I've never heard anyone say it's really hard to get my carbs in. I can't seem to get it in. No, it becomes more difficult to get your veggies and proteins in. Fats are a little bit easier as well, but carbs, and not only that, but carbs have been demonized. If you want to have a hormone balance, endocrinologists, which are hormone specialists, will say you need to keep carbohydrates in your diet. This is very helpful. However, we want to keep them in their proper balance. The asterisk there is also there to distinguish if you have any type of insulin resistance, pre-diabetes or diabetes. This is a condition where your body does not tolerate, it's creating an intolerance to digesting carbohydrates. So that is something you would need to take into account. If you do not have insulin resistance, then you don't need to consider this so much. You do need to keep carbohydrates in your diet. Okay. How often do you fuel up your car? How often do you fuel your body? 2 to 4 times a day, right? We have meals. There's a time to eat. There's a time to go live life. There's a time to eat. There's a time to go live life. So this is what we eat. But when do we eat? How do I know when it's time to eat? So this is a hunger scale. Your body has hunger hormones and fullness hormones. And also there's receptors around your stomach. And there's hormones that regulate the overall amount of stored energy on your body. So how do we know? We just talked about what to eat. We want to have certain components, and we want to do it in a brain-friendly way so that our brain doesn't, cause a reverse response, so it doesn't reject the change. We want to make brain-friendly shifts. But this is when we know when to eat. So this is a hunger scale. 0 in the middle means you're neither hungry or hungry. You're just normal, just neutral, kind of like how I am right now. -10 is I'm so hungry, you're probably going to pass out. +10 is I'm so full, you throw up. -5 is I'm getting pretty, in my house, what we call hangry. I'm getting pretty hungry. Like I could just eat just about anything. That's getting pretty hungry. And +5 is I'm full, but I'm uncomfortably full. Any normal eater sometimes hits -5 and sometimes hits +5. But if we want to feel good during the day, then we want to keep our hunger scale within the +4 to -4 range. And when do we eat? We eat when we're actually hungry, anywhere below 0. When we're actually hungry, what does hunger feel like? Well, maybe a slight headache, a dip in energy, a malaise, a dip in a feeling in your arms of weakness or your legs of weakness, a grumbling in your stomach. There's a hollow feeling in your stomach. All of these things can indicate kind of a dip in blood sugar, which is usually felt as a dip in energy, that malaise feeling. As we begin to eat in sync with our hunger cues, this is also very regulating for our hunger and fullness hormones. So we want to pay attention to this. When we listen to our body, if we think, oh, I want to go eat, or it's time to eat, let's go eat, and you realize, oh, I'm not even hungry, well, then it's not time to eat. We wait until we're actually hungry. Now, anytime that we want to eat in between meals that we're not actually hungry, that's when we apply other techniques and skills that have to do with thought and emotion release techniques. But this is the flow of fueling our body. I'm going to go ahead and come out of, oh, one more thing I want to show you. Let me hit screen share again. Perfection is the thief of progress. I want you to throw perfectionism out the world. Perfection is not for this life, okay? Nothing in this world is perfect. And you striving to be perfect is actually a survival response to try to keep yourself safe. That's a survival response, perfectionist. So we're going to throw perfectionism out the window. It doesn't even exist. It's not even helpful. And instead, we're going to replace it with progress. Without progress, you will not become who you want to be in the future. Okay. And instead, I want you to think in terms of the B standard. We're going to strive to feed our body when she's hungry with those components that I talked about, with the flow of eating. Eat when we're hungry, stop when we're satisfied, right? Eat when we're about a -2, -3, and then eat until we're about a +2, +3. And then we go live life. And then we repeat when we're hungry. And that should happen about 2 to 4 times a day. I notice on days that I exercise, I eat 3 to 4 times a day. On the days that I don't exercise, 2 times actually does it. And if I'm not hungry, then I don't eat. I'm living life. My tank, my fuel tank is not get at a place where it needs to be filled up, right? Would you fill up your car every time you ran to the grocery store? No, you wait until it's time to fill her up, okay? Same thing with your body. This regulates your insulin levels. This regulates your ghrelin and your leptin. It's very, it's just a harmonious way to interact with your body. We eat when we're hungry, we stop when we're satisfied, and we don't get weird about it. We're human, which means we're not going to do anything perfect. So the B standard is that 80 to 90% of the time, this is the flow that we're in. And we strive for a B standard. We don't strive to be perfect in anything. And I teach the women in my program, I am not perfect with anything that I'm teaching you. I don't want you to be perfect with everything I'm teaching you. I am not. I want you to strive for the B standard. All right. Let me stop screen share for a moment here. So when do we eat? When we're hungry, what do we eat? We have quality fuelings where there's lots of protein, there's veggies involved, there's a fat involved, and there's a carbohydrate depending on if we have insulin resistance or not. When we eat in this way, we can be satisfied so that we don't having to fight our way through hunger. We're satisfied. And when our body's hungry again, then we eat. Anytime that we have an emotional hunger, right? Or we have a habitual hunger where we're not actually truly hungry in our body, that's when we employ other tools and skills that I teach in my larger Freedom with Body and Food program. I will be opening the doors soon to that program. If you would like to sign up on the wait list to get information to know when that program opens, go ahead and click on this link. Let me hit screen share. Sorry, don't click this link. It's above this video. I will put the link. If you click on the screen, it will not work. But if you go to carrienygaard.com/FBF waitlist, you will be added to that waitlist so that soon, when I open the doors, you will get an email knowing that I've done that. Let me stop screen share here. You need to know that the stored energy on your body is not a reflection of you being wrong, of your body being wrong. If you want to release, if you prefer to experience your body in a different way, then you can absolutely do that. But just know that you do not gain any more love or worthiness by doing so. You are exactly who you need to be in this moment. And as you accept that, your ability to make changes moving forward, to have future moments be different, increases. Thanks so much. I hope that you go to the link so that you can join me in my larger Freedom with Body and Food program. Bye-bye.